May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Paul Shippee. Paul was, I think he was the first podcast guest where the podcast was devoted to having a guest. So almost 3 years ago. 3 years ago, and where would that be? Probably in May 2019. Is that right? 2020, pardon me. 2020. You know, at the beginning, early days of the COVID phenomena. Anyway, there he talked at length about his Zen practice, his history of coming to Zen Center, then going to study with Trungpa, and especially about his meditation. It's really good. And he's going to focus today more on talking about his work with Nonviolent Communication, NVC, and an upcoming workshop, NVC and Buddhism, that you can learn about it other than what you hear here by going to paulshippee.com, PaulShippee.com. And look, when you get to his website, it says workshops, and then you click the down arrow and you got two choices, NVC or Buddhism NVC. What you want is Buddhism NVC. That's the one that he's plugging right now. And that's just going to be a Tuesday, hour and a half class. I think 4 times, maybe more. I can't remember. You'll hear. And you can read it there. When you go to Buddhism NVC, you have a choice, registration or info. So look at the info and then register if you're of such a mind. Anyway, Paul's a dear old friend, as we say in the podcast. I always visit him when I'm in Crestone. And, interesting guy. The first thing I heard about him is I don't think I asked him about it this time. It's probably on, I have an interview with him on Cuke.com. I mean, there's various things through the years I have with him. I think I remember hearing about him when he first came out. It was the late 60s, that he'd come out to be an engineer on the second level of the Bay Bridge. A lot of things I think I find out were wrong. So I'll have to ask, is that true or not? So right now you can just put it in the I think I remember that category. But look, there's nothing more to say. Let's just give Paul Shippee a call. That'll be right after the pause to meditate. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you want. And when you think you're in that perfect state of mind to come back in, hit unpause, and we'll be there to hit the bell to end the meditation or whatever. And we'll give Paul Shippee a call.
Good morning.
Good morning, Paul. How you doing?
Doing okay.
Yeah.
My daughter just left.
Hmm.
She visited today.
Hmm. Hmm. Where does she live?
She she lives here with Zigar Control Rinpoche, a Tibetan Lama. She's his partner and chief of staff, and she lives here with 5 minutes away, 10 minutes away, and she comes over once a week to spend half a day or more with me, help me out on the roof, on the computer, whatever I need. Vacuum cleaner, computer wizardry, things I don't know how to handle on the
That's
computer.
neat. Yeah.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
of that.
Oh, that's great. Hmm.
Hey, did your partner ever come back to Bali?
Yeah. Yeah. We've been
She
living
did,
here almost 9 years.
but she had to go away at some point for a couple of years, or she couldn't get
No.
back in.
No,
I
no,
think you
no,
told me.
no, no, not that bad. She goes every year to America unless her son Seth comes here, which happened once. In fact, she is going to arrive in Seattle in about 10 minutes. And but the first year of COVID, she was stuck there 4 months.
I see.
That was
That was what
fine.
I
That was
remember.
fine. She was staying with her son, and she visited Clay, my younger son,
Oh yeah, sure.
and
Oh,
she'll visit him and his two daughters and his mate
oh yes, two
in
daughters.
in December. She'll be there in December. Yeah. I got your notice that you've got this workshop coming up, or I don't know what to call it. I can't remember. And I thought, time to talk to Paul again. So why don't you explain what that is and what's coming up?
Yeah, well, it's called a Buddhist NVC, Buddhist and Nonviolent Communication, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What it does is the classes I've been teaching on Zoom the past 3 years, and before that since 15 years, was called Nonviolent Communication and Buddhist Mindfulness. So it's
Mm-hmm.
flipping the emphasis, so it's leading with Buddhism and then going and using NVC as a secondary support.
Now, let me ask you something about the schedule. When do you start it?
We started on November 15th
Oh, good.
at 4 o'clock,
Good.
and it's an hour and a half, and we meet every other Tuesday.
Hmm. Hmm. I say good because I'm going to post this on Saturday. I wanted to make sure I
Okay.
got in before it. Hmm. All right.
Yeah, and what's to know about that is there's a link that has a page that goes to a page for information about this new workshop, which is an evolution from the old one, which is not old. I'm still doing one of those right now. We're going into our fifth week or fifth session
Oh.
on Tuesday. So it's not that I'm not doing the other one with the NVC emphasis first. It's that I'm adding something onto it that's been gnawing at me for months, if not years. And I finally figured out or got the courage to offer it as a class. Limited class, 4 sessions only, hour and a half each, every other Tuesday. And then with the provision that if people want to continue after the 4 sessions, then we can go for another 4 sessions. But I'm only committing at first to 4 sessions because I want to see how it goes. It's an experiment, David. It's an experiment in bringing a lot of my perceptions of the deficiencies of American Buddhism and the support that can be had through nonviolent communication, and vice versa, by the way. So it's an experiment to bring those two together, and I guess the hard part is finding the right audience. So I put out these notices, which you got one, and then you called me or emailed me. And that's something I've been gnawing at in my mind and my heart for quite a while, some years, several years. I can tell you the root of it, where it sprang from. That would seem to be the interesting part, I guess.
But give me the link.
The link, okay, I'll have to read it. I could send it. I'm having trouble with my email, David. A lot of the emails haven't been going through, so I called my server people, HostGator, and they're working on it. So I don't know, but I can read you the link here.
Yeah,
I can read it to you.
And send it too.
Okay, I'll do both. Let me see where it is here.
It's in the. Is it in the emails you send out?
Yeah, but I don't know if you're Yeah, well, when you say emails, it's in some emails. More recently, because I made some corrections. Let me see if I can find. I could just read it to you.
Yeah.
I can tell you how to find it. If you go to paulshippee.com.
Yeah.
And you go to the. Well, I'm going to walk you right through it right now. If you go to paulshippee.com and you go up in the menu, there's something that says workshops.
Yeah. Hey, you're knocking on the mic or something.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There's something that says workshops. And then if you look at the drop down from there, there's two items. One says NVC workshop, which is the one I've been doing forever. And the next one down says Buddhism /NVC class. And that's the one we're talking about. And if you slide over from that, from the menu to the sidebar that opens up, it goes into Buddhist NVC, which is the official name of the class, info. And then underneath that, there's another selection, which is registration. So I want to send people to the info, and then from there, they can go to the registration. Because the info is a letter that I wrote some time ago explaining my ideas about why I'm doing this. And so shall I read you that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. It's paulshippee.com /
Yeah, and I think we should say it's Paul Shippee, SHIPPEE .com.
Yes. Right.
.com /
And then there's 4 words that follow that. The first word is new, N-E-W.
Yeah.
And then there's a dash.
Yeah.
And the next word is Buddhism with a small b.
It doesn't matter, small or big there.
These are all lowercase anyway. After Buddhism, there's another dash. And the third word is NVC, N as in Nonviolent Communication, NVC, right?
Yeah.
NVC. And then there's another dash. The last word is class.
Yeah.
So
all
new
right.
Buddhism NVC class with a dash between each word.
Yeah.
So that as a thing after the / will bring you to the info page, which tells all about the class, and you can also register from there. It says registration, click here, registration, click here. Further thoughts about NVC, about Buddhism and NVC, et cetera, et cetera. It's just like maybe 1 or 2 pages, not much.
Yeah. All right.
And at the top, you might have noticed this, it says NVC is the legwork, Buddhism is the heavy lifting. That's just a little slogan that occurred to me one day, a couple of months ago, and I don't want to make a big deal about that slogan, but it does appear at the top of the page.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I like
it. Yeah. Okay. Good. I like it, but I just wonder how it strikes other people.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So, read it.
Read it to you?
You want to? Only if you want.
I could. Well, let's see. I can talk about it.
Yeah, just talk about it. Just talk about it.
Yeah, I can talk about it. Let me just read the first paragraph, and then
Yeah.
I'll talk about the rest. Okay, it says a new series of classes. We will introduce a new series of classes in Buddhist practice and study that will take us beyond parentheses and include NVC, meeting every other Tuesday, 4 to 5:30 p.m. MT, which is Mountain Time, for 4 sessions starting November 15th, 2022. I would like to share traditional wisdom teachings from both the Tibetan and Japanese and Buddhist world views that I have studied and practiced for decades. These wisdom teachings are applicable to our daily modern lives and will address our personal interests in spiritual development. They are based on the teachings in America of Zen Master Suzuki Roshi and Meditation Master Chogyam Trungpa. So that's the first paragraph. So you might say, okay, let me read the second paragraph because it gets a little more clear. One aspect of these classes is to track where NVC and Buddhist psychology fit together and can enhance each other in North American society. It has been said that to enjoy a sane and peaceful culture, we need religion / spirituality, psychology, and social science. We will explore how the strengths and relative weaknesses of both NVC and American Buddhism can be identified and used to support each other to meet healthy spiritual and social / relationship needs. So that's the first 2 paragraphs. That's kind of introductory. Orient people like where I'm coming from on the surface anyway.
Yeah.
So your invitation to talk about it makes me inclined to tell you how this combination of Buddhism and NVC arose.
Yeah, sure, do.
Well, why I'm doing it. Well, obviously, I've been involved with both for years. I mean, Buddhism for 50 years and NVC for 16 years now.
Buddhism longer than 50 years.
Yeah, maybe close to 60. As long as I've known you.
Yeah, that was
Bush Street.
I don't know.
That was on Bush Street.
Yeah. Late 60s, and then Tassajara, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was 67 when I first came to the Bush Street Zendo. And I met you shortly after that. And then I had to go away to the East Coast. So I got meditation instruction, and I met Suzuki Roshi, and I went to a lecture. We don't have to go into that part.
No, it's all. We've talked about that on earlier podcasts, though.
Right.
But it's good to refresh our memory,
Okay. So so around 1967, after being an actor, after being a civil engineer, and then I worked in that for maybe around a year. Then I had to go into the Army for 6 months for that program that was at that time under John Kennedy, and then I went into acting and music and made friends with all the people in San Francisco in the Revolution, counterculture, artists, people. Janis Joplin was a friend of mine, for example, like personal, and people like Peter Coyote I met in that time early on in 1964. So
you and Peter remained close.
Yes, we have. That's right.
Yeah.
And we still are. And I was hoping he would take this class. He might. Some of his students are going to take this class, so he is certainly going to know about it, and he does know about it because I told him about it.
Yeah, he's a busy guy. Yeah, try to nail him down.
Well, he's got so much going on now, like
Yeah.
coming out with two or three books in one scoop there, and having to promote them and all of that. And then maybe he's got some more writing to do, and then he's got classes and trying to bring people into Buddhism as a teacher, and he's got his hands full.
Yeah.
No question. So anyway, so then I went back to the East Coast and recovered from an illness from taking too many drugs and coming down with hepatitis C. A lot of us did. Peter Coyote came down with hepatitis C as well. A lot of us did. One of my sisters did. So I was one of those who contacted hepatitis C. So my brother sent me a one-way ticket. They were down and out at that point. But I was living with two actresses that invited me to hear a talk by Suzuki Roshi at the Bush Street Temple. And so I went. And although it didn't quite register fully at the time, I realized that of all my searching, like into science and engineering, which was my college and work life in my early 20s, and then into art and music and acting to wake up my right brain, which was getting hell and starving for attention. So I needed to pay attention to that. So I went into acting and married a beautiful woman who's an actress. We made a movie together. And anyway, at the end of all that, I got sick and went back home. My brother sent me a one-way ticket. He knew I was in trouble. And so I recovered for almost 2 years in Connecticut and then in Manhattan and New York City, all the time sitting every day. And if I had trouble concentrating, I would smoke a little dope, and that would help me concentrate for 20 minutes. I was determined to learn meditation. And then in New York City, I got a job with a nice job with the New York City Department of Welfare. And my case study was the black women with single moms in Bedford-Stuyvesant in Brooklyn. And I was going over there and trying to dispense money so they could feed their kids. And we'd come home and meditate every day. And one day I saw in the Village Voice a picture of Peter Schneider, who was a college friend of mine, him and his brother both. And I was sitting every day and I was trying to learn meditation more and more. And I looked at that picture in the Village Voice newspaper and I said, well, if Peter Schneider can do it, I can do it. He was being touted as the director of Tassajara at the time.
Yeah.
So I immediately called up, the Zen Center and got on the phone with Yvonne, telling her I want to learn more meditation, not just a half an hour after work every day, but I want to go full time, and I want to go to Tassajara. So I got back to San Francisco, where I had left the motorcycle behind, and I sold that, and gave me tuition for the first semester, the first training period, in 1960. Was that 1969, I guess, the fall training period, and then I became valuable to the community because I was a good mechanic in the shop. So I took charge of the shop, and I got free tuition for the next three, what do you call them, training periods.
Yeah.
Lasting 2 years.
Yeah, yeah.
While I was in Tassajara in my fourth training period there, my roommate, his name was Van, he came back after the winter break with some tapes of Trungpa and asked me if I wanted to listen to them. And I said, no. I had already seen Trungpa over Christmas of that year. That would have been coming into the year of 71, January of 71. And I saw Trungpa was at the Zen Center meeting Suzuki Roshi. He gave a community talk. I went to that. I asked a question from the far back of the room. I was just there temporarily at City Center until the next training period would start in January 15th or 20th, whenever that was. And so I asked a question from far back. I don't remember what I asked, and I don't remember what he said, but I do remember one thing, was that he didn't speak like a bureaucrat. He spoke directly to me. Even though I was way back in the room, he seemed to grasp what I was asking beyond the words almost. And I never forget the feeling of that. That was kind of like a feeling. And so he comes, so my roommate Van comes a couple of weeks later, into the start of the fourth training period, my fourth training period, in January of '71, and he's got this stack of tapes and asked me if I would offer to share them, and I kind of said no, I'm not. I don't want to do that. But one thing I was doing was in the reading study period after morning meditation every day, I found myself reflecting back, reading only Tibetan Buddhist books, like Lama Govinda, The Foundations of Tibetan Mysticism, and The Life of Naropa, and these other books that I somehow didn't know what I was doing. And I was trying to understand this teaching called the six paramitas in Tibetan Buddhism.
Called what?
And six paramitas, or six transcendental behaviors or qualities that a person can have to start out, needs to develop on the spiritual path. And the first one is generosity, and the second one is discipline, and then the third one is patience, and then the next one is exertion or energy, and then the next one is meditation or samadhi, and the last one is prajna or wisdom or clear seeing. So those teachings I was trying to read in a book I got out of the Tassajara library, but it was like reading English translations of Japanese translations of Chinese, and I couldn't quite get the drift of what they were saying, but I was still interested. Right in the midst of that study, Van shows up with this tape, and I saw on his table in his room one morning, we were roommates, this tape called The Six Paramitas. And I said, well, I'm just trying to understand that. Why don't I sit down and get a tape recorder and play these audio tapes? And I got in trouble for not showing up at this in the study period. I would stay in my cabin and turn on the tape machine and listen to Trungpa expound or teach about the six paramitas. And it came across the content and the clarity with which he explained the six paramitas was so clear. Like a bell went off in my head. It was the clarity that he explained. And I said, oh, so that's what I've been studying. Trungpa had a command of English language right away when he came to America. And so anyway, I at the end of the training period, after 3 months, I heard that he was going to be in Oakland, California, giving a talk. And so I made arrangement with some friends to stay with them when I went up there to San Francisco. I went over to Oakland and sat in the front row, waited for Trungpa to appear. And then he comes and gives a talk. And I had written him a letter asking him if he thought it was a good plan to move from Zen Buddhism in America, for an American, to move from Zen Buddhism over to Tibetan Buddhism. Anyway, I don't know what he said. He never answered it, but he did talk to me. And I went over to Berkeley. He was staying in Sam Burkholz's house, the founder of Shambhala Publications. And Sam was just had a bookstore at the time in Berkeley. And I met Trungpa, and I asked if I could become his student. Not 1 month after I had left Tassajara. And I considered strongly whether or not I should become a Zen priest as a way of giving back what I had learned from 2 years of meditation at Tassajara as a monk meditation. And I decided that I wasn't going to go to get priest ordination. I wasn't going to go on that path. And I was going to go, I wanted to go and study more with Trungpa. So as far as I know, I was the first one to leave, or one of the first ones to leave the Zen Center and go become a student of Trungpa. Anyway, so that
you might have been,
So that starts a career of studying, combining both Zen, which is kind of silent Buddhism in a lot of ways, because there's not a lot of teachings in terms of philosophy and stuff. There's core, sayings and koans and whatnot, but but in Tibetan Buddhism, it's lavishly supplied with intellectual properties that expound about the Buddhist teachings and the Buddhist virtues. So anyway, I entered that. But what I noticed, even in Tassajara and even at the city center in San Francisco, the San Francisco Zen Center, city center, what I noticed, and this became the key to why I'm teaching this class here. What I noticed, I wasn't fully conscious of it at the time, but I started to notice that that Zen students and Tibetan Buddhist students both didn't seem very friendly. They didn't seem to have relationship skills. They didn't seem to have relationship skills. And so as I became more gradually aware of that, as the years went by, I started to study psychology because I started having children, and I wanted to treat them right. I didn't want to damage them. So I started studying psychology and to keep a step ahead of their development as children. And I started to learn more about myself, which is that I didn't have relationship skills either, you know, and so I felt like I wasn't very happy about that. And as I became more self-aware in terms of psychology, I realized that I grew up in a family all during childhood in which emotions were not on the table. Emotions were not mentioned. They were not taught. There was no emotional life. There was a roof over the head and new shoes for fall going back to school. We were lower middle class. There was enough food, but there was not really what I would call happiness. There was a Protestant quality, and feelings and emotions were, and I wasn't aware of that I was missing anything. I just thought that's the way life was. But as I began to mingle in the community, both the Zen community and the Tibetan, in Boulder, especially where I moved to, I began to realize that I used the word, when I first started to become aware of it, I used the word emotional starvation. That was the quality of my existence in the Buddhist Sangha. Now, whether that was due to my lack of skills or whether it was due to people are in general, I began to realize that I'm not the only one who was emotionally deprived in childhood. Most people are. That's what I learned over time, and not just Buddhists. However, people that come to Buddhism seem to be a little bit more wounded or conscious of it and seeking something. They may not know what it is, but it results in a non-friendly atmosphere with not a lot of warmth. So in the year 2006, when I was building my house here, I came across an article and a New Dimensions radio show where Michael Toms was interviewing Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of Nonviolent Communication. And as soon as I didn't need to hear that twice, I knew exactly that was the missing. Nonviolent Communications was focusing on becoming aware of feelings and how to identify them and express them, and also becoming aware of needs, universal human needs, of which neither of which was on my agenda, and my perception was that the whole society, culture, American Western society, is emotionally illiterate, and did not have a literacy of needs either. So those two things played a big important part. And I dove in and started teaching NVC almost right away because I understood it immediately because of my emotional starvation. I know I needed something. And Buddhism was not providing it. And so we get to the next point, which is, why is Buddhism not providing it? Well, my take on that is that Buddhism comes from a culture that is grounded in a long history of ancestors and communal worship and family bondages And they don't have any real pressing need to develop relationships because the relationships are mapped out on this communal framework where any expression of I, me, and mine is actually frowned upon. And you must put the group first, whatever the group happens to be. Whereas in America, I learned much later that the main characteristic was that we had cultivated a hegemony of individualistic mindset. And that for Buddhism to come over here and teach us about relationships is like trying to get to the moon on a bicycle. So I began to see that they cannot teach us anything about emotions because they don't need to learn that in their own culture. The cultures are so disparate and different that it just doesn't apply. So you have these lamas coming over here trying to teach us about Buddhism, and all the Buddhist teachings are fine. But when it comes to relationships, they can't help us. So gradually I began to understand that we have to do this ourselves. This is our North American way. We have to take on the task of undermining the hegemony of individualistic mindset in the Western world in order to produce the actual fruits of Buddhism properly. The warmth and the connection and the compassion and then the wisdom. And that won't grow if we're huddled into our old family, non-emotional being, and we don't know how to nurture relational mindset. So I'm putting this class together, David, in order to overcome the deficiencies of relationships in Buddhism, the lack of relationships in Buddhism, lack of relationship skills, and to teach people or encourage people and do this together, share the need. In order to have Buddhism thrive in America, we have to undermine the hegemony of the individualistic mindset. That's how I've come to see what I'm doing.
So how does nonviolent communication, can you give some example?
Yeah.
Like when I hear nonviolent communication, I think, talking with somebody without hitting them.
Well, on the other end of that spectrum, yeah, for sure. But on the other end of that spectrum, Marshall Rosenberg, the founder of Nonviolent Communication, who I trained with extensively, I paid to go down to Albuquerque and go to international intensive seminars, residential training programs in nonviolent communication. What he says, I took training with him and more than once, but that was when you go down there for 9 days and you living in the building with other people from around the world who came from Australia and other places to learn NVC, you get a good training. And then I've taken other trainings from him in Boulder at Naropa Institute when he would come up and give a weekend, or some of his proteges would come up and teach. And I've been trained by a lot of his students, let's say, who are turned into teachers. What he says, Marshall Rosenberg said one time, he said, consider even the use of the word should when you tell somebody something should be a certain way, or they should do something differently, or they should be this. Even that is considered to be like the germ of violence. Mm-hmm. They're trying to remake them, or you're not seeing them for what they are. And if Buddhism has anything to do with this, it's Suzuki Roshi's famous statement of seeing things as it is, rather than trying to tell somebody what to do by using the word shoulds. That's not seeing, that's anti-dharmic. That's not seeing what is. And that's also anti-dharmic, and it's the seed of violence is right in there, because you know better than the other person, and you're going to tell them what's right. So there's one example. Another example is when you talk about sharing power with people, to be able to distinguish between power with others, power over others, and power under others. So nonviolent communication would gives me anyway, a way to look more accurately and more deeply at what I'm doing, and gives me the tools to be able to. I'll give you my biggest example, what I needed the most. I have grown up with a lot of anger because I didn't understand life, and I was pissed off about it. I knew I didn't understand. I was suffering, and I was attracted to Buddhism because I thought Suzuki Roshi impressed me so much the first time I heard him talk, that I thought years later, like how it hit me was, hey, there's a person I've been looking for you all my life. That's how powerful Suzuki Roshi's presence hit me when my first talk that he gave on Christmas in 1967. And so to be able to see what is and see clearly, you have to be able to accept people where they are, as it is, like she says, which has become one of the most famous phrases as it gets around the world. I've heard it coming from so many different quarters, keep quoting him. And also Buddhism is concerned with, in Tibetan Buddhism, it's taught to see the higher learning is based on the ability to see what is in a situation rather than what you want. And what you want is usually the seed of violence, because you're pushing other people out of the way and you're putting an ego-based preference out there, dismissing other people, not even having any compassion at all or empathy for the other person's feelings or needs. And what that does is that's where violence comes from. It's not just hitting somebody. It's how you treat people and how they feel when you interact with them. If they feel like you're the kindest person they've ever met, or do they feel, I better stay away from that guy or that girl because I don't feel good around them, because they're always trying to tell me what's right and what's wrong. So Marshall Rosenberg brings Rumi onto the stage, the Persian poet Rumi, with his saying, in order to demonstrate about another little subtle quality of nonviolence. The saying of Rumi, which goes like this: somewhere out there is a meadow. Somewhere out there, beyond ideas of right and wrong, there is a meadow. I'll meet you there. So that's quoted from Rumi, and beyond ideas of right and wrong. That seems to be the key, the essence of nonviolence, right there.
Mm.
Beyond ideas of right and wrong.
Mm.
If you go around thinking you're right and you approach people that way and interact with them, then that's the root of violence. But I can tell you, David, as I mentioned earlier, a minute ago, the best example that I have for my own reference for what happened to me is, having been emotionally deprived, I developed a fair amount of anger in my life and personality because I didn't understand things. So I would just get angry. I just had that way. But at some point along the line, teaching nonviolent communication classes, it started to dawn on me when we teach about feelings, for example, feelings and needs. The awareness of feelings and needs is the crux of nonviolent communication teachings, becoming aware of your feelings and needs. For me, almost like a miracle happened, which was I began to see a principle here, a psychological principle, that underneath all anger, if you look closely enough and can pause in your anger, if you look underneath anger, you will find the emotion of hurt. So it becomes that anger is a sideshow for hurt.
Mm.
Anger covers up hurt. So anger, it brings violence. I could get angry and smack somebody, or yell at them, or dismiss them, or call them names. But instead, if I were to look back off and just give myself some space, which is a quality that I learned in Buddhist meditation, give myself some space and around the anger, if I begin to see that underneath the anger, what's driving the anger is that I don't want to feel that hurt because it's painful. And in the Buddhist world, there's such a teaching, a Buddhist first teaching called the Four Noble Truths. And the first teaching of that is there is suffering. So I did not want to accept the suffering of the hurt. I would rather cover it up with anger and be done with it and come out righteous and brush the other person away and not care what anybody thought about me. So that's been a pattern that I have lived, and I have come through to the other side when I learned that, can I have the capacity to feel the hurt? Yes, everybody has the capacity, and Buddha emphasized that as his first teaching, the capacity to be able to realize that in the First Noble Truth, that there is suffering in life, and you have to face it. If you don't face it, you're going to be prone to violence, prone to isolation. You're going to have lack of warmth, and you might be successful, but you're going to be a jerk in many ways. And you're not going to have kindness and compassion and empathy for people. So you see how the anger covered up the primal emotion, the fundamental emotion, which was hurt. Now, where the hurt came from, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to figure everything out. Just understand that if you stay with the hurt and let it be there and just meet it and stay with it, it eventually opens up to why and where that hurt is coming from. But at least you have taken a step away from the cover-up violent emotion of anger. Not that all anger is violent, just the other kinds of anger. I'm talking about this anger that people have that's a deeply emotional cover-up for they don't want to feel the hurt. Most anger is how do you say? Most anger is it's a cover-up, a sideshow for hurt. Or sadness. If you go below the hurt, you might find sadness. And below that, you might even, if you stay with it long enough, which we do in the workshops, you stay with it long enough, you're going to find fear. Fear of what? Fear of the pain of feeling whatever it is you're feeling that might be difficult and you want to run away from. Mm. So it's a psychological journey, whether it's in Buddhism or in nonviolent communication. It's trying to clean up your act, so to speak, so that you can see other people and you can see what is, and you don't try to violently crush things that are in your way, in the way of your ego, let's say. So does that explain about violence a little bit?
Yeah, sure. That's a good explanation.
Yeah, I've lived it, as you can tell, and I'm very happy about having come to understand these things. And the gift of Buddhism is to understand emptiness. And we can understand that through meditation and some teachings. So when you combine the awareness of feelings and needs, which Buddhism does not offer as it comes from Asia over to the West, you combine Buddhist offerings of compassion and wisdom, including the whether you get it from direct experience or analysis, the idea of non-self, then combine that with NVC, we could make a really good society out of that. So I'm into building I'm into making little contribution to a sane, what I conceive of as a sane society.
That's well, you've got plenty to work with there in America.
Is Bali, people in Bali are they like that?
Like what?
Well, super individualistic.
No. People here Well, the example I tend to use is there's a lot of traffic here. There's too much. It's a problem. There's tons and tons of motor scooters and motorcycles and cars and trucks.
Right.
And I've never seen road rage. 9 years.
Wow. Nice.
One thing that's really good here is you can turn in front of people. There's a line of cars coming forever and motorbikes and everything. And all you need is just a little room, where they have plenty of time to slow down. That's all. And people just do it,
And they don't get angry at you.
No. Every once in a while I hear somebody honk at somebody or something, it's nothing. And, walking down the street. I mean, I spend a lot of time at home, especially when Katrina's gone, working. That's mainly what I do. And, then I love to get out and go walk, and I'm just walking. I walk to do something, and pretty much say hello to everyone, or just good afternoon, good morning, what's happening, and very normal. I'll be passing somebody, they'll say, "Hi, where are you going?" or "Where have you been?"
America is characterized by what some people would call speediness. People are speeding around.
Yeah.
And when you're speeding around and it gets frenetic, either driven by greed or a desire to get ahead or to avoid pain, even, speed can cover up a lot of pain. You just jump from one thing to another, go home and turn on the television or something, and just constantly occupied. There's no contemplative space. So meditation is being spreading all over America pretty fast these days. Whether it's Buddhism light or Buddhism heavy or Buddhism Asian, whatever it is, there's quite a lot of it being pushed out in certain magazines and media and social media. It's just all over the place. I mean, I follow it, so I'm probably more exposed than most people. But the more people I meet, when I tell them what I'm doing, they say, "Oh yeah, I'm interested in that." And so I feel like it's for a large segment of the population, it seems like people are more and more open to doing something about this crazy American speedy lifestyle that people have that makes them run over other people and get anxious and depressed and have to take medications and go to cognitive behavioral therapy, and none of it works, and the medication doesn't work either. It just puts them in a zombie mode. And more and more people are wanting to get out of that. And I'm hoping, I don't have any statistics, but it's just a sense I have. Yeah. So nonviolent communication, you get the drift that it's becoming aware of your own feelings and needs and the feelings and needs of other people. So that means if you're talking to somebody and they start babbling on and they don't say anything about feelings and needs, but I mean, it's not an argument, they're just talking. Maybe they're complaining, but you develop the skill to, like the graduate school, so to speak, in NVC, is to, no matter what they're saying, you're put your attention behind what they're saying to be able to ascertain what they're actually feeling and what they're needing, even though they're not saying that. You can get that from how they're talking and what they're saying. So when you have to bring a compassionate response or an empathic connection, you can address, because you're trained to look behind what they're actually saying, even if it's violent, and ask them, take a guess. Are you feeling angry? Are you feeling upset? Because you need more respect in your life, or something like that gives you a vehicle to not just the word compassion, but it turns into, you can turn yourself into an act of compassion by doing that.
Well, that's good. I've learned more about nonviolent communication today than I knew. I mean, I've heard you talking about it, that you're doing it and this and that, but you've never. We never got to the point where you explained it this much.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you invited me too.
Yeah.
To do that.
Well, one of the complaints I used to hear, dealing with guests so much at Tassajara, and was why aren't the students more friendly? Why is and I'd say, oh, they're tired and they're working hard and they get up early and. I said they're really not unfriendly. They're just maybe being a little introverted or something. May your teaching of NVC and Buddhism prosper, and you have many good students.
Well, we'll see. I enjoy it. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
I do it because I enjoy. I get the warmth and the friendliness is by engaging students in workshops and putting on workshops and inviting people. I get a lot out of that. I get the friendliness and the sociability that you can never get on the street in America or generally, and never get in social media, never get in movies, and never get at work either, or in a bar for that matter. Don't get it anywhere. What I get from teaching engaging these people, I love these people, and it gives me a chance to love people. How I can see into them. They talk about they're learning. They're eager to learn it, and they want to be able to express feelings because they haven't learned how to do it. And seeing them learn how to do that and sharing that with them, I feel just a warmth with them. I just have a love in my heart for those people that are trying to do this. So it's easy for me. It's not. I mean, it takes effort, but it's easy effort. It's not like a drag or something.
Yeah. Well, I've always enjoyed visiting with you.
When are you coming back?
No plans.
I'd like to see you in Crestone sometime.
It's possible.
I have a Tassajara story for you. You might like.
You have a Tassajara story, you said?
Yes.
I am very eager to hear it.
Okay, so the first time I went to Tassajara to my first training period, I got there and I parked my truck and I got my room, and I was informed that we have to get up we have to be on the cushion at 4:20. And I said to myself, holy cow, how can there's no way I can do that. So I tried the first morning, and I think I made it, but I was really miserable. So that afternoon, I was sitting talking to somebody, and a thought occurred to me that, and this worked. This is a thing that worked to help me. I thought, hey, you know what? If I just thought to myself, I'm going to take the attitude that if I don't get up, nobody's going to get up. If I don't get up, in other words, everybody getting up depends on me getting up. I took that in. I just made that up, and I took it in, and it worked. From then on, I didn't have any trouble.
That's good. Yeah, I really like that. I really like that. I'll definitely include that. No, I mean, I will. I'll try. I think that's very good. That's the sort of thing I like for it. Yeah, good. Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the only thing I can think of right now, but I thought you might like it.
Yeah. Oh, that is cool. That is cool.
I don't know where that came from. I didn't reference anybody. I didn't think of anything. It just occurred to me that I was kind of desperate, actually. I don't know how I can get up at 4:00 in the morning. I've never done that. How can I possibly do that? And it just occurred to me that I have to do it because I'm here and I'm committed to be here. So how can I do it? Well, what about all these other people? They need me to get up.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And that's skillful means, you know.
Yeah.
That's a good example of skillful means. Using skillful means in yourself. In other words, not trying to do something logical necessarily, or that's absolutely factually true, but something that'll work. That's like Buddha's example of skillful means, upaya, was, you got to get the kids out of the building, it's burning. He said, well, tell them you got toys for them. They'll run down.
Right.
And so that's not true.
The thing that interests me about that story is I don't know where it came from. There's no precedent in my life that ever, I didn't have any rules about that. It just came out of the blue, out of desperation, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, everything comes from, I don't know, where mysterious sources where, I feel like my life is just channeling stuff from myself and others and the universe, and I don't know where things come from. There's I don't try to understand things. I think things are not understandable.
I call it, we need to dispense with the tyranny of thinking.
That's well said. Well said. Put it in its place. We need it. Exactly. It's going to continue, but don't let it run the whole show. Yeah.
Right. That's exactly right. I like that quote from Alan Watts. Also, I think that's it's a good tool, but a poor master. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, this has been great.
Yeah. Well, it's been. I'm so glad you reached out to me, and I'm glad we had a nice talk. And really nice to connect with you. And I always have fond memories of you, and so I'm really glad we're still connected.
Yeah, no kidding. It's good. Paul, it has been a great pleasure speaking with you again.
Well, I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. We did a good number here.
Yeah, that's great. Okay.
All right.
Take care.
Well, we'll be in touch. Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. So thanks a lot, Paul Shippee. Most interesting. And maybe I'll find the time to do that. I should learn how to be less violent. I notice whenever I have conversations, the people end up on the ground all bleeding and everything. Pardon me, that's a terrible joke. I'm sorry. So let me give you his website where you can see about that workshop. I think it's going to be on Tuesdays, starting in like a little over a week from today, which is Saturday, the 4th of November. His website is paulshippee.com, SHIPPEE, SHIPPEE. Did I say 3 E's there? PPEE.com. And then just go to workshops, Buddhism, and NVC. Okay. Thank you, Paul. This has been a Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Doggy Bandita, Feline Cuchita, but not dear lovely Katrinka, who is now in America. Son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughters. And later in December, we'll be with my son, mate, ex-mate, and 2 granddaughters from them. Okay. So until then, we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.